Welcome to South Charlotte Sports Report Live on a Tuesday afternoon. We've got a very special guest joining us. She's a name that many people have heard of, and now they're going to get a chance to get to know her. It's Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools Athletic Director Sue Doran. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Tripp. Hope you are, and I appreciate the opportunity to come on your show.
We're all grinding through it. You know, we know what we're facing and see where it goes. But tell us about yourself. People know your name, they know your title, but they don't know your background. How long? Just give us the real quick overview.
All right. I was a high school sport athlete, and I played basketball, volleyball.
At what high school?
And that was back when there were no scholarships for women.
Yeah.
I went to a Division II school, and I played basketball and volleyball at the Division II school, stayed and got my master's. When I graduated, I had one of my counselors come to me and say, here's the job description. You ought to apply for this job. So I did. And it was at East Tennessee State University as an assistant women's basketball coach. I got the job. I spent 25 years on the college level, 20 coaching, 5 in administration.
I had no idea. I'm glad I asked that question.
Yeah. And then somebody told me about the opening in CMS.
So straight from East Tennessee to here.
No. I was at many different universities.
Okay.
25 years.
Okay.
And then, but applied for the job here. My family's all in Georgia. That's where I went to high school and college. So I came back down to this area. They hired me, and the rest is history.
So you came in working with a big name in CMS athletics.
A legend. Yes.
A legend. I was going to call her a legend, and I backed up on that. She is a legend, Vicki Hamilton, right?
Yes.
And she had been here for a long, long time.
30-something years. Yeah.
What is she doing now? No one ever hears from her. I know you're in touch, right?
Yeah, she kind of goes back and forth between Hilton Head and Charlotte, but she's running athletics in the Hilton Head area right now. I know she's gotten involved in the sports commission down there and is doing great. And the thing I appreciate about Vicki is she did take a chance on me. She taught me a lot about just the inner workings of CMS and public school education to begin with. But then I'll always be grateful for the confidence that she showed in me. So have a ton of respect for her, always have.
Special lady. Hardest part of your job, and then I'm going to follow that with the favorite part of your job. So go negative, positive.
Yeah. So I would say the hardest part of the job is happening right now. And that is having to make decisions when there's no right answer, there's no easy answer, because there's so much that's unknown. So you're navigating through something that none of us have ever experienced before, having to make decisions that impact many, many people. And when you make them, some people are going to be happy and other people are not going to be happy.
Exactly.
But it doesn't keep you from having to make them. So I would say, right now, that's the tough part of the job. The part of the job that I like the best is seeing student athletes succeed. And what I mean by succeed is not winning championships, not even winning conference championships, because really most of the student athletes that play in CMS are never going to win a championship. Never going to go to college on a scholarship. And I want the student athletes that aren't champions to have a phenomenal experience just having participated on their high school teams through the course of the 4 years they're in school.
Creating memories.
So that, and it's amazing because as I go around and I watch games and people talk to me, they want to tell a story from their high school days.
Yeah.
I mean, they do. They don't forget. I mean, the last second shot, missing it, making it. I mean, they don't forget it. And to me, that's what high school athletics is about for the whole. There are some that become superstars and go on, but for the whole, that's what high school athletics is.
And, in my 16 years of running the South Charlotte Sports Report, I've always been focused on the student part of student athlete and just what an incredible thousands and thousands and thousands of kids that are earning amazing opportunities into college, whether they're playing sports or not, but just those kind of success stories and how many doctors and lawyers and engineers that can look back to their playing days and, they remember the bus rides. They remember the team dinners and they remember their coach. And that's, You're right. That's my
You
favorite.
know, and just what that experience teaches, because as I talk with different people that run corporations in the city or around the area, they love to hire individuals that have been student athletes just because of what they've learned as athletes, be it high school or the college level. So high school is a great experience. And again, it's not all about winning a championship or getting a scholarship.
I fully agree.
Yeah.
As soon as I posted that you and I were going to talk, I had an overload of coaches and athletic directors send me this question. So,
Okay.
and you can ask it 100 times. So,
yeah.
Explain why CMS has not opened back up for athletics, as far as, we'll just use Union County as a comparison because it's down here on my side of town and it's so easy. They've been running since July with workouts and things like that. What is it? And I realize this decision is you're part of this decision, but you're not the sole decision maker here. What's key? What's stopping it?
What were some of the things that we looked at?
Yeah.
You know, we looked at the health metrics first and foremost in Mecklenburg County. And when you look at the number of cases in Mecklenburg County, and if you look at our rate of positive tests for individuals tested, those numbers were high. They were really, really high. And, you know, we went into phase 2 on May 23rd. We entered phase 2 in the reopening plan for the state. And we stayed in it through 3 potential rounds of the governor announcing us coming out.
And he's getting ready to announce something today. Let's see what he announces.
Right now.
Yeah.
Right now. Yeah.
We're interrupting. Go ahead.
Yeah, so, you know, staying in phase 2, looking at our numbers, and in talking with other athletic directors, large district, metropolitan area athletic directors across the state, some of the same thought processes that they were going through, and many of them have not opened. Wake hasn't opened, Cabarrus hasn't opened, Durham hasn't opened, Chapel Hill, Carborough, you know, there's a lot that have not opened. And the fact that the state had not given us any firm direction on, are we going to have a fall? Are we not going to have a fall? What's our season going to be? So all of that played into it. But ultimately, it was the health metrics and just the health and safety of our student athletes. I know in talking to our ADs, several of them talked about how they really didn't want to start and then have to stop because we may have had an outbreak and start and stop, start and stop. So, you know, just wanted things to try to get at a more level outlook from the health metric standpoint, and then to get an answer from the state on where we were going with fall. And, you know, those 2 things were big. And then, you know, hopefully we'll go to phase 3 today, which was another part of our decision-making process.
Oh, it'll probably be phase 2.99. It'll be, we're not going
to. That still beats 2.
It does.
Yeah.
A couple months ago, you were asked by the Charlotte Observer reporter, what do you think on high school football happening in the fall? And I think you said 50-50, or you were more negative than positive. And I thought at that time she doesn't, I completely disagree, but I've since learned a lot more on some of the dynamics inside your building and things like that. And some of the things we talked about, but let's now take a step back. And volleyball's coming up. It's an indoor sport. It's not high, not low impact, but it's something. I mean, if you were put a % chance for CMS, knowing that, well, not knowing, but all things considered and where we are right now with kids in a class, do you feel a certain percentage of being able to start on time with an indoor sport?
Are you talking about November 4th practicing,
Yes.
or are you talking about games?
Either one. Games.
Yeah. You know, I know. The next decision we have to make is in regard to if we're still all remote.
Yeah.
And we don't have a single student in any building. You know, what are we going to do from the athletic standpoint? But if we open up and we are in some type of remote, I think the district is going to give a long, hard look to the possibility for athletics. You know, the thing that makes high school to me a little more difficult than even the college or particularly than the college and the pros, is they have the ability to test.
Yeah.
So, they're going to bring student athletes out on the field that have been tested, and they're going against each other, and they know they tested negative. We're not doing that. We're asking health questions, and we are trusting our student athletes and our coaches to give us accurate, honest answers. And then we're working with a virus that many times doesn't show any symptoms. So, that's our plan is a lot different in that regard than in looking at, well, college is going to play football, or pro is going to try to play football, or any sport at this point. The NBA's playing because they were in a bubble. We're not going to have a bubble in high school. So I think we've got to all prepare ourselves for, we're going to be operating in a much different environment than a collegiate or a professional team. And, a lot of that has to do with we can't test. So, in some ways we're flying blind. But, we're at the point where I think hopefully our numbers can get lower, our metrics are better, and, everybody's a little more comfortable with taking a step forward.
And really, those metrics,
where that takes us.
And those metrics are going to dictate everything, not just athletics. That's the thing that numbers are going to have to be better. I mean, the numbers, we keep hearing the numbers, but
and that
there is a certain level of comfort there.
Yeah, that came to life when colleges opened back up, and students, not student athletes who were being tested, but students went back to campus who were not being tested.
Didn't work out too well.
And it shut right down.
Yeah, my school was one of the first. So.
Yeah.
That did come back quick. And obviously those metrics, I was going to ask you about wrestling being high contact and football being high contact, but I don't even want to ask you to put a percentage on that because there's so many unknowns and you have no idea what the winter is going to bring. I mean, depending on who you talk to, you hear different answers. I was doing a speech to the Kiwanis Club the other day and had a doctor raise his hand, ask a question, and wanted to tell me about a duodemic. So I didn't even want to hear about that. But
well, I can't put a percentage on it. But from a personal standpoint, I can tell you, I sure hope we are. I mean, I do. I hope we are.
I cannot imagine.
Yeah.
I don't even want to imagine. I mean, I'll be honest. My family was impacted by losing the spring season with my son, and it was horrible. It was horrendous. I don't want anybody to go through that.
Yeah.
It just.
Well, that's one thing I appreciate that the high school association did. They do have every sport. Indoor track is the one that's not going to have a season. But, they've cut the seasons down. They've moved them out of the traditional time. But every single student athlete's going to have a shot at having a season. And, I do appreciate the high school association's effort in that regard.
And, it's definitely on their end over in Chapel Hill. But, there is the situation. We have to at least know about it, and you have to prepare for it, that other counties are operating when the season starts, and CMS's or Charlotte Mecklenburg's numbers are not where they need to be. And there is no South Meck, RDK, Providence, Huff High School volleyball team. I mean, that is a reality, correct?
Yeah, I don't even like the sound of that. But
I don't either, but it is.
It
is a reality.
Yes.
Once it all begins, November 20. Well, I got all my dates wrong. November when the first two sports begin.
Yeah, November 4th is the practice.
There we go. Well, I got independent school dates. I got public school dates. I got things everywhere. When that begins, what do you think the biggest challenge is going to be?
I think there's going to be a biggest challenge for administrators, and it could be different for a coach, and it could be different for a parent, and it could be different for a school community. But I think one of the big things is, and a lot of it's going to have to do with if there's going to be any fans in the stands, because that creates such an environment that drives the student athletes on the court or the field or in the pool or wherever. So that's going to be a major difference. I think potentially we may have some smaller teams in regard to number of student athletes participating, just because there's going to be some people that will play and some that won't. I think the state may put a restriction on some of the teams that typically have larger numbers. They may ask them to carry smaller squads, part of the reason is just the whole transportation piece of this. I spoke with our transportation office yesterday. And, even if we go to phase 3 and even if things look great, they're not anticipating that the social distancing piece of individuals on a bus are going to change. So where we normally, where we normally may take 3 or 4 buses to go to a football game, may take 6 or 8 now.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's a transportation cost. And again, that's just for the players. They may be walking into a stadium that has, nobody in it, or very limited people in it. So I think just it's just going to be different. And I think where coaches we're going to find out how creative coaches are. They're going to have to create a culture of excitement within their program just to play the game when there's no external stimulus to get kids pumped up. They're going to have to find ways for that to happen. And I do know once you put, whatever sport you're playing, I'll just talk football, you put the helmet on and you strap it up and you're out there. I mean, your adrenaline flows and, you're going to want to hit and play. But there are moments in a game where you're like, whew, and the crowd can give you what you need to get you across the goal line. So I think it's going to be interesting to see just the creativity of our coaches in how they're going to internally get teams motivated in every sport to play the game, not so much because there's an environment, because it's the game. And there may be times that it feels more like a practice than a game if there's nobody in the stands. Yeah,
I can see that situation coming, and I hope they allow some people in, because I can't imagine some of these parents. They'll be climbing. They'll try to get a view in through the fence somehow. It will be something. But
and I'll talk about a hardship from an athletic director standpoint at the school level. If there's no revenue generated from ticket sales, they're going to have some challenges at the school level in just how they're going to operate the program.
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, just in looking at the sports compacted and how much is going to be going on and the demand inside of the stadium.
Yes.
For the fall, you want to talk about someone that's really going to earn their stipend as an athletic director. Those folks are going to be incredibly busy.
Yeah, they always are, but in this instance, even more.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do you been a lot of communication? I mean, have you heard, like, as you guys at Mecklenburg County have been working on this, have some of your athletic directors been able to provide good ideas that maybe you haven't come up with internally, and kind of had a network of bouncing ideas off one another for these safety aspects?
I actually put a couple of weeks ago, I put them into 3 groups, or they put themselves into 3 groups, and I asked them to come back and report on 3 different areas. And we had that reporting out yesterday in a Zoom meeting of high school athletic directors. And, all 3 groups did a great job. And the thing that I always remind them of is we're wanting to get their input, but they're not making the decisions. But their input needs to get to the table of the decision makers. And they had some phenomenal ideas, because, it's amazing when, as you move farther away from being on the field, like you move from a coach to a school AD, to a district AD, or to a principal, or to central office. A lot of times when you get away from it, you forget everything that the people that are boots on the ground live with every day. And so it's important to go back and ask for their input and to listen to them. And then what's hard for them to understand is they don't always grasp where you're making a decision up here for the whole, and they want a decision for their school or their sport. Yeah.
No,
so
you nailed it there.
You got to figure out how to blend the two.
You completely nailed it there. And I think something, myself included, that I have to remind myself sometimes what works in Wilkes County, Iredell County, Robeson County doesn't necessarily work in Mecklenburg County and Wake County and Guilford County. And I think that probably has a lot more to do with how this season is going to be operated than anything else, because we're so different across the state, and what can be tolerated and what's happening across the state. And I have to remind myself of that sometimes, and so that makes your job even tougher in Mecklenburg County, being
Well,
one of the ones that has to make decisions a little bit different.
when we start bringing our teams back, we're ultimately going to bring 9,000. I say 9,000. We have over 10,000 roster spots, but some of those are dual sport athletes.
Right.
So we're going to be bringing back, 9,000 student athletes onto our fields and courts and pools and tracks. And 9,000, that's a ton. And, the thing that we talk about as athletic directors in the school even is that we've got to get this process right. And we got to get it right on day one. And then we have to get it right every day after. And so, it's not just as easy as opening the door and throwing the balls out and now we're playing again. Life is different now.
And it's going to be different once we begin. And if you have an outbreak on a team, it's going to cause
a ripple. Yeah.
A big ripple. Exactly.
Yeah.
One more question.
Okay.
You guys are committed to putting together some form of middle school athletics in the second semester, right?
That is our goal.
Okay.
That is definitely our goal. But, middle school in CMS is funded 100% through generated revenue.
Right. I remember that. I was part of that.
Yeah.
Many years ago, yes.
From participation fee, dollar surcharge of high school regular season ticket sales, and then corporate partnerships. And so we had a meeting with middle school athletic directors a couple of weeks ago. And much like what the high school association did with a compact, less game schedule, we do have that ready to go on the middle school level. But again, what's going to drive that is the funding at this point. And all of that's going to be impacted by what happens with this high school season in the fall. But again, kind of like how I told you, I am hopeful volleyball and football that we're all on the field for. I am hopeful on the middle school level. We're on the fields as well, because it's not only important for 9th through 12th graders, it's important for 7th through 8th graders as well. But we have some challenges that are unique to middle school in CMS that we don't have on the high school level.
Exactly.
The biggest being the funding piece of it.
Exactly. I kind of lie. One more question. You talk about, and I talk about it every day, but the mental challenges that these kids are facing, and how, with your experience in athletics, that being back together with the value of being back with your coach, of being with your teammates, that will do for the overall mental health metric, for lack of a better word, in our community.
I hope as they come back and they're in their first huddle with their coach, and the coach says, so tell me something you've learned through all this. What is something that really has smacked you and you've learned as a high school student athlete? I hope every single one of them says to take nothing for granted,
exactly.
to appreciate my teammates, to love hard practices, because nothing's guaranteed for tomorrow, nothing. And, the thing about the high school experience, putting on the jersey for your high school team, it is family. And they were ripped away from a family. And, we've had to have our coaches get, again, creative through Zoom meetings, through, putting in systems through Zoom. We've had to hope that teammates are communicating with teammates that, they have bonded in a non-traditional way, not what they're used to doing,
right,
not what has always been, but that this experience hasn't been totally negative. We shouldn't go through this and come out of it and think the whole thing was negative.
Right.
It doesn't have to be. And, I hopefully they've learned a lot about themselves. They've learned a lot about their teammates. They've learned, what they appreciate. They've learned what's important maybe versus what's not important. And hopefully that's what coaches have been talking to them about over the last 5 months. Because as hard as it's been, you can always come out of something hard better. And I'm hopeful ours are coming out better and not bitter or worse.
Exactly.
And that has a lot to do with really who you're listening to, and who you're letting impact you. And so, I'm hopeful that, once we are back out there, everybody's just going to exhale. It's going to be phenomenal. But I hope they do look back and think, man, that was tough, but this is some good things that I've learned from going through it. That's what I'm trying to do. Some days are easier than others.
Listen, this is a challenge. Anybody that tells you they're not facing mental challenges right now is not being honest with you.
And coaches should be used to that, because you walk in a locker room after a loss. I mean, you gotta get them going, because you've got a game the next week, or if it's a sport where you've got a game in 2 days. So you've got to learn how to take a setback, how to take something that's tough, and get better from it. And that's I think that's what we need to emphasize moving forward as the adults in this equation. We need to emphasize, listen, it was hard. I didn't like it. You didn't like it. There was nothing fun about it most days, but how are we better because of it?
Right. And let's all keep our health and survive and get stronger. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll leave it at that. It's been good time. I know how busy you are. I know how busy your athletic directors are and your coaches are going to be. And we will just continue to pray that we get those health metrics where they need to be, and these kids get back out there and are competing and participating and loving the game and making special memories, as you and I talked about. But
I agree with all that. I appreciate the opportunity.
No, thank you so much for joining us. I'll be in touch, and we will leave you here, and we'll be back tomorrow night with a very special student athlete interview. Great. Thanks so much for joining us on South Charlotte Sports Report Live. Everyone, have a good night.
Thank you.